Now, you may be wondering, so how do I analyze qualitative data? If I don't have numbers or statistics, what do I do with all these recordings and focus groups and narratives? Well, there is a whole process that we won't get into extreme detail in this course, but it is important to remember, again, you're doing inductive analysis, so you don't know what you're testing for, so you don't have a hypothesis, so you can't run a statistical regression test to determine the relationship between two variables because, again, qualitative data is, in some cases, about finding out what those variables should be. So you usually will transcribe the data. So obviously this is all text, written, spoken, observations. So you have to transcribe them if they're recorded. Then you, depending on the purpose of your research, you may have different rules for how you're going to code. So it's basically a systematic process of taking what was said and assigning certain meanings to them. Somebody that said, I feel like my substance abuse is triggered by frustrations at work, then you might code that as work frustrations. You have different rules. Again, sometimes you may know what codes and you want to search for work frustrations, or you may just let it happen organically. Eventually, you will group those concepts into themes, and then those themes are what you will describe. You may even look for certain commonalities that bounce around across the themes and write about those as well in your analysis. So there's a whole process, but it is still pretty systematic and it goes step by step. There is software as well to help with that, and so you may want to explore a program called VII, which is one of the most widely used software programs used for these purposes. Now, how do you strengthen the internal validity of qualitative research? Just because it's qualitative does not mean it is not rigorous. It does not mean that it's not worth doing. We need qualitative research in order to do quantitative research. And in social work, sometimes the questions we have are best answered by qualitative research. So qualitative research is not better or worse. It is complementary to quantitative research. But there are ways to do it better than others. So some of the things you may want to think about is, first of all, do an audit trail. That means that keep a journal of changes that evolve so that when you write up why you included one participant over another, why you coded something one way over another, you want to keep a journal about all the decisions you make along the way. You want to make sure it's trustworthy, so make sure that you are checking your bias and making sure you're representing things fairly and not the way that you want them to be seen, which means include information that may not be favorable to you or your research question, but be credible as well. That means that give yourself credit. If you see things that happen throughout the study, that whether they're positive or negative, take notes, document that. Be consistent. So use the same process, ask the same questions, follow the same process as much as possible. You also want to triangulate. So you may not need to be the only person looking at that data. You may need to have two other researchers together looking at it and then coming together to compare if you came up with the same concepts and themes. Generally, you are going to look at working somewhere for longer periods of time because if you're really getting into more in-depth research, then clearly time leads to more depth. If in community-based participatory research you do this almost automatically, but maybe you can always go back and ask participants, hey, here's the themes that came up. Would you say this is a valid reflection? Maybe there's additional information they may think about when you reflect back with them, and document those biases. You will want to see certain things. You may interact with participants in a way that influences them. There's no way to be bias-free when it comes to qualitative research. So the importance really relies on you then to document those biases so that they're clearly reflected when you write your results and that the reader can understand your research, understanding how you may have influenced it.